My third son is actually, or was actually, a professional road cyclist. And that was actually the trigger that got me into sport. I was always also trying to find a way to keep funding this team, to use 2023 as a year to build out a platform that would look to aggregate Africa's top performing athletes.
You are now taking them to the Middle East.
We'll be really focusing on how we can leverage the Middle East as a region to further enhance what we're trying to do with African athletes. Oh, misconceptions. We provide the ability for fans of African athletes to connect directly with athletes. Podium Pursuit is providing an athlete with the ability to build their brand, to amplify and talk to their fans about the things that are important to them.
Sounds like a LinkedIn of athletes.
Ignite the fan base of African athlete fans globally. We are using the platform to its full extent to be able to deliver fans an experience that right now they're not getting.
Welcome in the Valley. I'm your host today and my name is Ibrahim Sanya. We have an amazing show today, but before that, a gentle reminder. Press that subscribe button, join the community of funders and founders, changing sports, tech, entertainment and fashion from Africa to the rest of the world. And never miss a thing. Enjoy the show.
Welcome in the Valley, Rebcca. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Well, we're in your lovely town of Joburg. We've had the pleasure to spend a vast amount of time with you during the Kalahari conference. And now we're cooking a great set of surprises for the coming year. But before you started this life in the sports sector, I know your career did not start in sport. Tell us about your life before sport and what triggered this new tunnel around sports, sport tech, and more.
Thanks, Ibrahim. So yes, my journey actually started out in retail and loyalty and rewards programs. I was part of the startup team for a project called My School, which was really an affinity program used to help parents to raise money for their children's school. So it incorporated a number of retail partners, providing a percentage of spend back to the families that were shopping at the various stores. So that took me on a journey through all of the major retailers, and I ended up building a consulting and strategy business alongside that was focused around developing and building loyalty programs for retail, financial services, and healthcare. So that was 20 years of my life. So yes, very different. I certainly hadn't planned to end up in that space. Prior to that, I'd had a publishing business for a number of years. So I'd always been on the sort of fringes of marketing, strategy development, technology in terms of enabling many of the things that we were doing.
Cool. And that set the base for a life in sports. So now you have two babies in the sports sector, two platforms. One servicing major sports teams like Kaiser, Chief, and other football team. And then you have another one that focuses on athletes and basically serves almost like a centralized data remit for all the athletes on the continent. Why don't you tell us about these two different babies of yours?
Okay, well, maybe before I tell you about those two babies, how I got into sport was actually, I have 4 children, so I have 4 other babies. And my third son is actually, or was actually, a professional road cyclist. And that was actually the trigger that got me into sport. As he was a junior coming up through the ranks into the elite categories, there weren't a lot of local South African teams that were taking first-year road cyclists. So he, together with a group of his peers, got together and started a team called ProTouch. ProTouch went on to be, within the first 2 years, the top-ranked South African road cycling team. And at the end of 2018, the team was invited to go up to Tour of Rwanda.
Nice.
And that was really the first international event that this group of road cyclists had attended. And so we went up to Rwanda and we got to meet lots of international teams and lots of international people, all focused around road cycling, and also obviously got exposed to many of the other road cyclists from Africa and specifically from Rwanda. So that was the start of my journey and relationship with Rwanda. That team went on to be the top ranked team in Africa. We registered a continental team in 2019. And over 2019 through to the end of 2022, we had 26 riders from 6 African countries. And that team rode in multiple UCI international events in Asia, in Europe, in the US, and obviously on the continent.
Very cool.
So that is how I ended up in sport, because I think as parents, we had expected that this would be a 1-year journey of, a little bit of budget towards some kit and some race entries, and that our son would go on to bigger, better things. But the journey ended up really being a team where I then adopted, I suppose, 26 other African children.
Wow.
And I think it was really over that time that I started to, number one, understand the plight of African athletes in terms of funding and opportunity and the ability to get to international competitions, to be able to perform at that level. And I think I was always also trying to find a way to keep funding this team. Because we'd obviously started it out and, we now had a commitment to all these riders, and trying to sell cycling in the South African and even the African context was not an easy thing to do in the traditional sponsorship arenas, partly because there just isn't enough exposure on television. There isn't enough exposure for sponsors to commit to the level of funding that is needed for an international team. So that's how I ended up in sport, because I was looking for a solution to fund the team.
Wow.
Over the 2 COVID years, we still managed to do between 12 and 15 international tours in between the lockdowns and after. And it was in that time that I did a fair amount of research around what were sporting teams doing worldwide to find ways to fund beyond the traditional sponsorship angle. And I came across this concept called fan engagement, which is not dissimilar to loyalty and rewards.
Correct.
It really sort of shifted for me in my mind the fact that understanding who one's customer is, being able to drive certain activities, understanding customer behavior was very similar in the sporting arena around fan engagement.
Wow.
So
all fall into places.
So yes, so that's how I ended up here. So then coming back to my 2 babies. So my first baby is the culmination of ProTouch Africa. We evolved the business from loyalty and rewards into a sports and fan tech business. And our focus really is around helping sports teams, clubs and federations to build fan engagement platforms, find new ways to monetize their brand, provide their fans with a digital clubhouse that allows them to connect with the teams, connect with the athletes, purchase merchandise, interact with the team, interact with their news, their social media, etc. So primarily that is what ProTouch Africa does as a client, as a business. Our clients are typically, as you said, football clubs. We have a rugby franchise. We also work with a hockey federation of South Africa. And typically our role is to work with those brands on finding new ways to monetize the sport beyond traditional sponsorship.
And you're helping now a basketball club called the Tigers. So definitely pluri-sports.
Absolutely.
And going full force. How about the second baby?
So the second baby really came off the back of that. As I said, really starting to understand the plight of an African athlete, not being able to access funding, being able to go into international competitions, both in team sports as well as individual sports. So at the end of 2022, I made a decision to not go forward and fund the team for a following year, and to use 2023 as a year to build out a platform that would look to aggregate Africa's top performing athletes, their fans, and a range of brands that are looking to obviously enable and power Africa's top performing athletes onto the world stage.
And to my understanding, this is many type of sports.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us a short list?
So Podium Pursuit is the name of the baby that you're referring to.
Yes.
We currently cover 36 different sports, 54 different African countries.
Wow.
And our database of athletes is now currently sitting at 4,500 athletes.
So those two babies started on the continent, but I understand that you are now taking them to the Middle East.
I am. So yes, I will be opening up an office in Abu Dhabi.
Nice.
In the next month or so. And we'll be based out of Abu Dhabi, but also still operating within South Africa and Rwanda, where we have offices. And we'll be really focusing on how we can leverage the Middle East as a region to further enhance what we're trying to do with African athletes. A lot of the focus around Podium Pursuit is around trying to enable the fan base or activate and ignite the fan base of African athlete fans globally. So, we are also looking to ignite the African diaspora worldwide, to really look at ways that we can build a sustainable athlete impact fund, that athletes that are at the top performing level would be able to access funding to be able to get to international competitions, fund all of the other OPEX requirements of being a top performing athlete.
Very cool. So clearly the choices are all strategic. Obviously South Africa and Rwanda, who are probably the most known countries for sports on the continent, and now Abu Dhabi. I mean, short of Riyadh and Qatar, you've covered all the bases. Now, as we are entering a new season for basketball, and you attended the Kalahari conference, what excites you the most around the prospect of that specific sport in South Africa, given what you've seen?
I think it's fantastic what's happening in basketball, and certainly with the NBA Africa really driving hard the new Basketball Africa League that's been running on the continent for a couple of years now. I think that has started to really inspire school sport into basketball. Certainly when I was at school, basketball was not a sport that was made available at all. So I think that the igniting of a sport like that on the continent is incredible, and the investment that is coming with that, I think, is really going to spur on a whole new era of athletes from the continent. I think, having been at the Basketball Africa League Kalahari conference and experiencing the whole vibe that goes on around a basketball game was fascinating. To just see the cross-section between sort of sport and entertainment and art and fashion and all the courtside sort of celebrities was really quite an experience. I certainly hadn't ever been to a basketball match previously. And I think also even the number of children that came out to watch the games, we had
to sing, to dance.
Absolutely, the brass band, playing in the stands was just fantastic. So I think it's a whole new era of sport here in Africa. That I don't think we've really experienced before, because I think traditionally, it's always been sort of football, rugby and cricket have been the sort of key focus areas. So I think it opens doors for many new opportunities for sporting people, and certainly many new sponsorship and brand opportunities, both from brands from the continent, to actually use basketball as a platform to the rest of the world.
So Rebcca, tell me about Podium Pursuit. Give me an example of what it is effectively achieving for an athlete.
So Podium Pursuit, the first phase is the build out of our digital Clubhouse, which is really where we provide the ability for fans of African athletes to connect directly with athletes. So within the fan app itself, we cover all of the major events as well as individual participation in events worldwide, covering results, start lists, African athletes' profiles and features on the world stage. So in essence, Podium Pursuit is providing an athlete with the ability to build their brand, to amplify and talk to their fans about the things that are important to them, and to use that platform as a mechanism for them to further monetize their brand, and I suppose to optimize their name, image, and likeness in a way that hasn't been done before.
It sounds like a LinkedIn of athletes.
100%.
How about your first baby? Give us an example of what it's doing for a specific club. And I understand that you have introduced also some blockchain-based features.
So our fan app platform is a platform that is based out of Switzerland. Okay. It is a white-labeled fan engagement solution that was produced by a company called Blocksport in Switzerland. And effectively, we are the licensed distributors here in Africa. So what we do is we take the fan app platform, we white label it for a particular brand. So right now we are live with, for example, South African Hockey Association. So it's the federation's app that is used to bring together hockey players and hockey fans into one central place. It aggregates all of their news feed, it aggregates all of their games, their matches, statistics, standings of the various leagues. They use the app also to deliver all of their merchandise sales for supporter wear. And also it has the ability to deliver things like digital collectibles of various players, as well as the ability to track fans' behavior and reward them for interactivity. So, in a sense, it is a loyalty and rewards type program, all centralized into one digital mobile application that allows a federation to further monetize their sport so that they can further help to fund their national teams, their up-and-coming players, etc. So we use the blockchain to drive voting polls. We use the blockchain to provide transparency around crowdfunding and around e-commerce that might happen within that platform. And tokenization obviously also provides the ability for fans to start to purchase fan tokens and use those to unlock further benefits.
Super cool. I also understand that you enable the club to sell their merch.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So we have a top football club that will be launching soon. And that platform will enable all of their merchandise and supporter wear. It will also enable experiences that fans of the club will be able to access in terms of experiential benefits. So whether that be the team doing training, before a game, behind the scenes in the locker room, Q&As with the chairman of the club, etc. So we are using the platform to its full extent to be able to deliver fans an experience that right now they're not getting. And I suppose it extends the relationship that the fan has with the club beyond the stadium and beyond match day. So it provides the ability for a fan to engage with that particular brand 365 days of the year, whether they're in country or somewhere else on the globe.
Super exciting, super exciting. I cannot wait to see more of it across markets.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Today's episode is sponsored by Statement. Statement is a media company focused on editorial coverage and market analysis of the African entertainment industry. Its production arm builds a pipeline for African women filmmakers. Magic Johnson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Latanya Richardson Jackson are among the investors that support the Statement's mission. We are big fans.
Now, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about Rebcca, and why do you think that is?
Misconceptions. I think most people who know me will probably say I work too hard. I think that's a big misconception, because I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, you don't necessarily separate work from not work. So I think the perception is that I work 24 hours a day, but I see it as, you know, the work that I do and the things that I spend my time on from a business perspective are things I really truly am passionate about. So I do think that, yeah, they would say I work too hard, but I don't think so.
And if you had a chance to speak to Rebcca, age 16, what would you tell to that little soul?
Oh, age 16. Well, my parents will probably tell you that at age 16, I was a very difficult child. I've always been independent and wanted to do my own thing. So I suppose if I had to give myself some advice back then, it probably would be, I think it might be more to take the road less traveled more. I think I'm entrepreneurial minded, but I tend to sometimes take the harder journey, and maybe there's a quicker way. So, yeah, I think that's a hard one.
So what is keeping Rebcca awake at night?
I think the second baby of mine is keeping me awake at night. We're in an Olympic year, and we really want to start to make an impact on African athletes in the lead up to LA 2028. So I think what's keeping me awake at night is pushing forward with building and creating this new platform and getting all of the different stakeholders aligned simultaneously, of athletes, fans, brands, investors, all seeing the same vision that I see. And I suppose it's not knowing which is going to be the thing that's going to actually be the trigger. You know, so is it a handful of top performing athletes with big following? You know, is it a big group of fans? Is it specific brands that would be able to activate and become the brands that power Africa's top athletes onto the world stage? So I think that's what's keeping me up at night, is nudging each of these streams, you know, forward, and at the same time, you know, also keeping focused on what is happening in the rest of the world, what are the new trends in technology, how are big brands building fan engagement platforms, what new technologies are being used to engage.
All right. Now, last question before we separate. Can you recollect what is the nicest thing someone has done or said to you?
I think the nicest thing for me was seeing the success of the ProTouch Africa team. We turned out 5 national champions and 2 continental champions in the period that we were funding this road cycling team. So I think, you know, seeing the faces of those riders in succeeding and achieving that and winning, I suppose it unites you. I mean, nations are united when we win at sport. So I think that, you know, even not necessarily winning some of the biggest races in the world, the opportunity to have been given to go and, you know, visit these countries, meet new people, I think that for me that was very fulfilling, and having those athletes actually be grateful and thankful for that opportunity, I think was probably the nicest.
Oh, that's beautiful. Rebcca, it's been lovely having you, and I only wish you the best for the upcoming part of the journey. And I look forward to doing more together with you. I think there's only exciting things ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the gift of your time, Rebcca.
Hey, if you like today's story, press like, leave a comment, subscribe, come back for more stories from founders and funders changing the face of sports, tech, entertainment, and fashion from Africa to the rest of the world. We look forward to seeing you again soon.